Today on Studio Stew, everyone's a critic. Are you?
Or
Hello,
more
Jen.
importantly, when should you take criticism and how should you take criticism if you want to maximize what you benefit from criticism?
Okay. Sounds legit to me. Well,
Introductions?
I'm Matt, of course. I mean, how could I not be? And you are.
I'm Jen.
Welcome back to another wonderful episode. We're talking criticism, obviously. Jen, I think we have talked about this, but we're going to talk to the people about this. So I will just ask you criticism in general, where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the different kinds of criticism?
First and foremost, I want to say that I think criticism can sometimes get a bad rap. A lot of times, as a creator, we get very attached to our work, and it can feel kind of almost like a personal attack when you get criticism. But try to see it a little bit more from an outside point of view, that here's somebody who actually looked or listened to your creation and has formed an opinion about it. Like maybe they didn't really analyze it very long. Maybe they just looked at it real quick and were like, I don't like that. But they still took a moment of their time where they could be looking at almost anything or listening to almost anything to look at what you were showing them or you were presenting to them. So I think first and foremost, we need to go into receiving criticism with a little bit of an attitude of gratitude, that this is somebody who took the time out of their life to look at what I'm trying to present, whatever story, music. Well, everything we create kind of has a story, right? This is a little personal slice of my story that I'm trying to share with other people, and they took the time to like listen to it, to absorb it, you know. So I think that first and foremost, when anybody provides you with criticism or with feedback, maybe feedback's a kinder word, because I think, you know, we can benefit from positive, you know, feedback as well as negative or more critical feedback. But to just be appreciative of that and to be thankful for that, even if you end up disregarding everything that they say, because you're totally allowed to do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's important to be grateful for the time and feedback that people can give you for your work, even if you're supplying them with free entertainment. I'm still always just like appreciative when anybody takes the time to like look at my stuff. What do you think, Matt?
Um, yeah, honestly, we talk about it often, the cacophony of content that is out there. And I think we'll get into it when we talk about what kind of criticism you're actually receiving. As we all know, there's trolls and haters out there as well. Um, but really, you have this one thing that you've poured your heart and soul into, and you put it out there. Um, and knowing that maybe it is a demo and you will get feedback on that, if you know what you're putting out there and the level that you've strived for, and you have some realistic expectations about it, that might help with the criticism. I'm not sure how you feel about that. But yeah, the gratitude that someone actually took the time during all of this that people are pumping things out to watch, look, and listen, or digest the story. I think a lot of people do worry about the hate that they'll get, but that's a whole nother thing. I think you can actually sift through that by just looking into what they're actually saying. You know, if they read into your story, because you said everything has a story or a journey, or you know, even if it's a song, it's just a certain length of time. You could tell who's invested some time into actually look and listen. So, yeah, like you said, it's just great to actually, and that might actually open up some doors. Someone who you didn't expect to reach out or give you some feedback might show up, and it might not be the kindest is the wrong word, but it may not be what you wanted to hear. But that could open up collaborations and things like that, or just mentorships or anything. Is really truly possible, because you may even just start to trust their eye, because you might find out that they're right. I've defended song choices to people and then had to secede and say, you were totally right. And being able to do that is a skill all of its own, but it is super beneficial. Do you think that's a good transition into the kinds of criticism?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
perfect
Okay,
transition.
cool.
So
Give us some knowledge here.
I think the first step, whenever you're kind of sifting through whatever feedback you're getting, as to whether or not how seriously you want to consider the feedback, is to kind of separate it into two different types of feedback. Is this subjective or is this objective feedback? In the sense that, are they talking about something from a technical standpoint that's purely objective, has nothing to do with style or taste or preference, but there is something objectively that could be improved about the work that they're analyzing. So if that was music, is there something about like the sound levels or the quality of the sound that could use improvement? If we're talking about art, is there something about the quality of the scan or the tools that you were using, or the presentation that just would be objectively better if it was done a different way? So I think that type of criticism immediately has a lot of validity, and you should really seriously consider what they have to say. Subjective, I think you have total permission to just completely reject anything that's subjective if you believe in what you're doing. So, if somebody says, I don't like this because, I don't like this style, or I'm not into this type of music, or, it's not their thing. So I think you can kind of dismiss that type of feedback as being like, well, that's personal preference. Now, maybe their personal preference is really important to you because they have a lot of authority. They're coming from an industry that you're interested in entering. They're a professional, or they're very experienced in what you're trying to create. So their subjective advice has a lot of weight and a lot of merit. And then maybe, you do need to take a step back, or maybe you should take a step back to seriously consider what kinds of suggestions they're giving, but just treat them like suggestions, because at the end of the day, it's still your project, your creation, and you want to be able to stay true to whatever story, vision, message you are trying to convey.
Yeah, finding out who you are versus accidental imitation. I know there's a quote about, imitation is one thing, stealing is how art is made. I'll put that in the comments, hopefully. It's a great quote about, this is flattering, but like just straight up stealing. That's how you make stuff. There was a quote also I shared with you about a guy trying to find out what he sounded like playing guitar, and his teacher, and who he liked a lot, said, stop listening to music for a month to hear what you sound like. So I guess you can take from many different things to like elements of this to create your story. You don't want to shut off the world, but basically when it comes down to the almost what I say content, or like a story, or you have to sound like you or tell your story, whatever the art or the creative project is. So you might find that there's a phase where you take this in and then kind of adjust and then still forge your path. I think what you said is very important. If you listen to everything that everyone says, just like in real life, you won't ever be your own person. You can take little bits from everywhere and, live an okay life and come out okay. And I think your project would be the same. A country, well, I guess I always use music, but a country guy, because these are the two most malaligned genres, country and metal. Any recording engineer worth their salt is going to be able to tell you the technical things that are wrong with your recording. If Nashville Bob says he doesn't like Screamo Ted's stuff, well, that's totally subjective. That could just be left off the table. And kind of like you're saying, I think you'll find that if you get that from respected peers and things, if they have the time and they do take it, they're probably not going to be like, oh, I hate your style. They're going to throw some bones at you, or like, oh, hey, your frame rate's too low, or you need to add some more animation in here, or you need to record with this kind of mic because it's muddy. So yeah, I think knowing the difference and when to tune into each one is very important, and probably lean towards the technical stuff, not I hate your style kind of things. Because there are haters, there are trolls. Beware. Confidence versus humility. What do you have to say on that? What does that mean for our conversation here today?
I think it's important to have a little mixture of both in the sense that we can always improve, right? I think that's one of the most exciting things about creating anything
Yes.
is the journey and the potential to improve. So I think that's where the humility aspect comes in, that if you don't have that, if you're not open to that, then you will probably be stagnant. You will probably get into what would be like a rut, or where you're just kind of going through the same motions and kind of producing the same content over and over and over again, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like when I'm working on comics or something and it's a really long project that I've spent years working on one book, it's kind of hard not to just be in a routine and consistently pumping out kind of like the same artwork over and over again. Once I'm done with that project, then I'm really thirsty for, to move on and to try something new and to try to improve or make some large difference, to my next body of work. And so I think that, that's one of the things that's the most exciting about, creating anything is, having that ability to like kind of try something new. And, like when somebody's like feeling down or like depressed, like a lot of times people will suggest like, oh, you should try something new, or, go out there and do something. And I think the same applies to like, creating anything. It would be pretty easy to get into a rut or lose that kind of motivation or inspiration if there wasn't that potential to like to improve and to try something new and to get out there, so to speak, with your work. But then I think the part that people don't usually talk about too much is having enough confidence in what you're trying to achieve that you can say no to the subjective criticism. Like I think a lot of people will say, oh, criticism's important, like especially if you're going to art school. Criticism is important. You got to take all that feedback. You got to listen to everything that people are saying, or else you're just going to be, stuck in your own ego. But I think it's also equally important as humility is to have confidence in who you are and what you're trying to achieve, that you can give yourself permission to say, I don't agree with that subjective feedback. Matt?
Yeah. And I think it takes practice to know the difference when it's in your face and and I don't think people understand how fast the rut can come, you know what I mean, and the need to do something different, and how fast it can sneak up on you. And I feel like you paid your dues. Like you said, I worked on something for a year. The cost and what it's going to take, and the pitfalls. If it's your first go round, I'm not trying to scare anyone out of doing it, but I don't think you're faced with those things, or someone does come down on you pretty hard and you can't, you're like, oh no, what do I do? It's all for naught. But if you have the confidence in the project and the humility to know the difference, it kind of sounds like that prayer. You'll benefit greatly from it. These are all really good points. I just feel like you've had kind of the road, and you've been to art school, and you've seen the things that can happen. So thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, if you have, I guess all the masters and people I can think of musically don't stop practicing. I think it was Steve Vai, famous guitar player. He has like a four drawer file cabinet, and he just takes the music out of the front and he practices it, and he just puts that in the back, and it's never stopped. It just keeps going, and he's done that forever and ever and ever. He adds to it, he changes it up, but the work is never done. So moving on, I guess. Is this still us? Balance. Resist being overreactive. Ooh,
So
finding balance.
my
That
last
feels like
and final point with taking criticism is to resist the impulse to immediately make whatever changes. Sometimes somebody can say something like really revolutionary to me that like opens my eyes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't stand what I just created because this person just flipped my worldview around, and like I need to immediately take in everything that they said and like rework everything I just did. I would say step back for a moment. Let yourself digest before you make any huge changes, to just kind of balance what they're saying and to remember what you were trying to achieve before you start implementing big sweeping changes. Do you have anything to add to that, Matt?
Yeah. So in terms of changes, I guess the other thing is finding out someone uses something and they give you a tip, and then using that for everything. I guess overuse. So don't just, like you said, immediately change everything, but also don't let that one thing hold you up. Like, know that, okay, they gave you that. There has to be more out there as well. It's not just this one thing and that's the answer to everything. So you put that color in everything, or you use that sound on everything. I think that is kind of balance. Not only realizing that it happened once, but it can happen many, 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 many more times. And you may find that influence never occurs to you again, or you might find the 12th thing they told you was, awesome, or a deal breaker. You never know. You could absolutely hate what they say in the end too. So I think that's great. Balance and realizing that it's not all definitive, and just because you take a little bit from this doctrine doesn't mean that you can't take a little bit from that and kind of forge your own path. So thank you very much. Do you have any other thoughts?
I have one last thought.
All right, parting
that
thought.
I just kind of formulated as you were talking.
Okay.
Whenever I give people constructive criticism, I always like to balance it by finding what I think their strongest part of their work is and letting them know what direction I feel like was their strongest before giving them my suggestions to what they could do to improve what they're working on. And I think you need to do that for yourself as well. Like how I was saying, don't jump into, being overreactive to criticism. I think that it's easy as an artist at least, to look back at previous work that I've improved from and say that was garbage. But it was still its own little journey, It was still trying to say something. I was still trying to achieve something when I made it. So I think it's important to always keep that in mind too when you're trashing your own work, to say, well, what was redeeming about this? What did I do? What did I achieve with this project? That was one positive thing, that was one step forward, because I don't think you're ever going to make something that's going to just be a complete and utter waste of time and effort.
Okay. I like it very much. You heard it here, folks, or heard it here first, folks. Live and let live. Learn. Tell someone you love their stuff. Tell them you hate it. Criticism is out there. Never fear. We are here to talk to you. We are Matt
And
Jen signing off. Remember, you can contact us at studio304@sjcpl.org, as well as 574-282-4646. You can call us and talk to us for real. Or you could just criticize us on the phone. That sounds like fun, too. Write in, call in, tell us what you want to hear, talk to us about stuff and things. Until then, we are Studio 304 signing off. Have a wonderful day, night, or year, whatever.